So now that we have made this cluster sorter function, let's implement these processes for both frequency and the monetary values. Now you use the cluster sorter function for the frequency, and here one important thing to note is we give the flag as sending as true here. That is, we want, here we are sorting this in the ascending order. Earlier in frequency, in recency, we saw that we gave it as false because we wanted it as a descending order, but here we are giving it, and then finally we are just sorting it, grouping it based on the frequency cluster to understand how it's been sorted out. So let's run this. So this is the output which we get. Now let's look at this closely. So here you have each of those clusters here, 0 to 3, and your frequency values is in a ascending order. Now why do we do this differently for both recency and frequency? So this is only to sort this according to the desired behavior. Now from a recency perspective, the desired behavior is, the customers, we want to understand those customers who have recently visited, because those are the customers who are more likely to come. Somebody who have visited recently than somebody who have visited a year back. So so the desired behavior is in terms of decreasing amount of recency. Less the recency, better that customer is. That's the idea. So but the frequency is the exact opposite. Somebody whose frequency is lower number is not the desired behavior, because we want some customers who frequently visit us. So that's why we give the ascending value as true, because now if you look at the frequency data frame which we have grouped, we see that the customers who are more frequent is in the bottom cluster, which is 3 cluster. So we are making the cluster 3 as the most desired behavior in terms of recency, frequency, and also monetary. Also we'll see next. So now cluster 3 has high frequency, who have frequented most, who have visited recently. So that's the idea of this whole clustering process. Let's do the same process for the monetary value. Again, here in monetary value also we give the value as the ascending value as true. So and let's implement this. So this is again the grouping which we get. So again, the desired behavior, the most good customers are in cluster 3. We have made that as cluster 3 because we want somebody who spends more. That's your desired behavior. Those customers who spends more, who are very frequent, and who have recently visited. The number of days is lesser in terms of recency, so these are all the 3 behaviors, and these most desired customers are in cluster 3, and the less desired customers are in customer 0, and in that decreasing order. So that's the purpose of all this clustering process which we have done, to get all those behaviors in aggregated in a specific order. We have now done the clustering and then sorted the clusters in a logical order. Now let's merge this data into the original data frame, the RFM age train data frame. So we'll merge the monetary cluster, frequency cluster, and recency cluster into this. So let's implement this and run this and look at the output. So this is the output which we get. So we have your customer ID, your frequency and recency, monetary, etc., and the clusters which we formed here. So all the 3 clusters, the monetary value cluster, frequency and recency clusters. So next what we'll do is, you have 3 different clusters here. Now let's combine all these 3 clusters into an overall score. So we'll use the cluster number, cluster value itself as an overall score. So because since we have already sorted this clusters in a logical order, let's combine this and then see what are the segments which we get. So let's do this. So the next line is about creating a new variable called overall score, and then you sum up all these cluster values. Let's implement this. So here we have this data frame with the overall score, and which is a sum total of all the clusters together. So let's group these data in terms of frequency, recency and monetary values, and then find the mean value of each of them according to the clusters. We'll or the overall score. Let's do this. Let's implement this and then find out what we have. So this is the final value which we get. Let's look at this closely. So how the clustering is done. Now we have 6 different clusters, because we had values, 3 different values or 3 different clusters for 3 different of variables, and so we have an overall score of 6 different clusters we have. So let's look at it. Now look at cluster 6 and cluster 5. Now cluster 6 and cluster 5 are where the maximum spenders are, who have spent a lot of money into them. Recency is also not the best, but decent. Frequency is also decent. So if you look at it, these are kind of your desirable clusters are at the bottom, and non-desirable clusters or non-desirable customers are in the clusters 0, 1, etc. Because here the monetary value, what they spend, is lesser. Recency is very high. Frequency is also low. So even with the overall score, we have our customers being segmented together or clustered together in a most desirable manner, in the order in which the cluster numbers are. So higher cluster values or higher cluster scores indicate more desirable customers, and then lower cluster scores indicate lesser desirable customers. So what we will do is, now we don't need all these 6 different customers, because the decision to that is we'll make depending on the number of customers who fall under each of these clusters. So let's see that how many customers fall under each of these different specific clusters, and then we'll take a call in terms of combining these different clusters into lesser number of clusters. So now let's look at the total number of customers in each of those clusters. So we will group by the overall score, which is the overall score, and then we'll take the count of any of those variables. You can take it on the customer ID. I'm just taking it on the frequency count, because each customer ID is just one line item, so it doesn't matter which variable which you take. So let's take the counts. Let's run this. So this is the output which we get. Now let's look at this. See, the clusters 4, 5 and 6 have much lesser number of customers. So it makes sense to combine 4, 5 and 6 into one single clusters. Now cluster 3, overall score 3, where there is fairly large amount of customers, is one of the most least desirable customers. So if you can look at it in the earlier data frame, you can see cluster 3 is monetary value is low, recency is reasonably recent, and frequency is also low. So this is one of the clusters which is the least desirable, and then we'll make it as the cluster. We'll keep it separate, and we'll make it a cluster Q1, as a separate segment called Q1. 4, 5 and 6 will make it as Q4, because that's the most desirable customers. Cluster 0 and 1 are also lesser in number, so we'll combine them into another cluster, so that and make it Q2 based on the values which we get. And then finally the cluster 2, where there is sufficient amount of customers, will make it as customer 3. So let's implement these steps in this thing. So here we are mentioning that we just making a new variable called segment, and then give default this value as q1, and then for each of those specific scores, when score is 0 and 1, we give it as in segment q2. For score 2, it's segment q3, and 4, 5 and 6 is q4. So and the rest is the balance is the score 2 or score 3, which is obviously q1. So let's run this. So this is the data frame which we get, the output which we get, and each of those customer IDs is segmented or given a new segment name, and we have only 4 segments. So now let's look at these, group these data according to the segment values, new segment values, and then see how it is, how these mean values of these the frequency, and recency and monetary values are. So let's run this step. So this is the output which we get. So here you can see that Q4 is the most desirable one, where frequency is one of the best here. Recency is also not the best, but second best, and here the monetary is the highest. So at least in 2 of these variables, either frequency and monetary, this is high, and you can look at it, and Q1 is one of the worst, where frequency is lowest and the monetary is also lowest. Maybe the recency is the highest, but that doesn't matter, because these are your less desirable, and your segmentation is based on that order. That Q4 segment is the best, then followed by Q3, and then go on. So that's the whole idea about these processes which we've done. Now we'll merge these data into the original customer details segment on customer ID, and then let's implement this. And so this is the final output which we get. So we have all the data which we want, and then we have all those segments also included into this. So this is overall. So let's just recap of what we did. So first we pre-processed the data to extract information required to generate the states. We extracted the date and other information. Then they transformed the data into the RFM format using that lifetimes packages. Then we did a lot of clustering, and we did clustering for recency, frequency, monetary. Then generated the composite scores, combined them together, sorted them, all these processes which we did, and then based on all the sortings we derived 4 different segments also. Okay, so this takes us to this end of this post, and then what do we do next? Next is about, now we take the segment data. Now next is about implement the self-learning algorithm, using the k-mean, the bandit problem, and how when we will use these segment data as states, and then implement the reinforcement learning problem statement on this, and that will be in the next post.